Now, my next question is to Mabel Miao, and it really builds on this, especially through the pandemic. Instead of an increase in international cooperation, which you might have expected, we've seen a retreat. Now, part of that is that the Trump administration wanted really no part of global cooperation and immediately pointed the finger at China for causing the pandemic and essentially making the tensions worse. But what we see more broadly in all countries is that populism and nationalism and protectionism in trade are on the rise. And so how do we then address these transnational challenges, or I would call them global challenges? If governments are becoming increasingly nationalist, who's going to speak for the globe?
Thank you, Anne. And it's my great pleasure to be here. And I love Paris Peace Forum very much. It's a good opportunity for global governance. This situation itself is a good place for our global governance, I think. Firstly, no country has actually retreated from international cooperation. Instead, many countries are trying to restore international cooperation by establishing and reviving various mechanisms, both regional and global. Like just now, we mentioned ASEAN countries, that is a kind of regional cooperation. No country can afford the loss by isolating itself from the international community. That is the reason we have seen so many efforts on data sharing, vaccination cooperation, and mutual recognition on vaccines in the pandemic. International cooperation has been functioning as before, although the level of cooperation went down because of prevailing, like you mentioned, the populism and the protectionism. But it is happy to see that many countries reopen its borders. Right now, transnational mobility restarts. China also held the annual International Import Expo in Shanghai in early November. It also applied to join more regional FTAs like CPTPP. China does not and cannot be kept away from the international community. I'm from China, so hopefully we will see the world return to normal in the near future. Nowadays, challenges seemingly come from populism and protectionism, but actually originating from the mismatching between the current global governance and the changing reality. The rising of climate change, digital economy, imbalance of economy development, we need to find ways to deal with them. The global governance is falling behind the global practices. There's a gap between the current global system and the dynamic global challenging situations. Like you mentioned, 80 years ago, there's many organizations. There was not many organizations. So far, we have more and more international mechanisms. It's totally different from that time, but we're still operating under a kind of the similar terms. Well, we need to assert the necessity of international cooperation on one hand, keeping reforming the current system on the other. Building trust, I think, is very, very crucial. So the dialogue, communication, interaction in the negotiations, or appropriate options taking us to address transnational challenges. No finger pointing, confrontation, and deterrence. I think there are some proposed from me for the paths lead to better global governance. I think the first one, we should find solutions to repair global governance by encouraging more technology innovation. Technology development may bring latest solution to narrow the gaps. That is very important. Secondly, we need to stress sustainable development goals, SDGs, for a better environment and ecology to security the future of the whole human being. The implementation of SDG will also help boost international cooperation as addressing climate change has become a common agenda for the international community. Thirdly, we need to put multilateralism as the most crucial principle for cooperation. So as to all countries and regions, despite the differences of their scales on territory, population, and resources, we have the equal right to participate in global agendas. The diversity and fairness of the global governance can only be secured with multilateralism. Although a global governance will survive, it may be partially replaced by regional cooperation mechanisms, such as the regional FTAs, like the CPTPP and RCEP. Regional integration is proved to be a more efficient way than global governance to overcome the imbalance of development while motivate the maximum potential of cooperation. Let's hope all regional cooperation mechanisms can be collaborated into one and inseparable system. Finally, I would like to propose that the WTO reform is quite important. It should continue. Of course, CPTPP is similar to like the small WTO, but we need more multilateral parties engaged. Maybe in the future, we propose the G7 can upgrade it to G10 plus India, China, and Russia, so we can continue our develop and innovate our new international mechanism. Thank you.